They picked the wrong morning to test me. At 6 a.m., barefoot on my porch in nothing but flannel boxers, I watched 3 patrol cars nose across the gravel like a slow-moving wall, lights strobing against my live oaks. To anyone else, I probably looked cornered. Truth is, that was the second the tide turned. Denise Pritchard, polished hair, polished smile, polished white SUV, had decided months ago that my place was an eyesore unworthy of her subdivision's standards. She papered my gate with $2,400 in fines, signed architectural compliance, sent photographers to catch my equipment at ugly angles, and bragged in a neighborhood forum that she'd bring order to the countryside. What she didn't know, I'm Cole Hartman, 42, retired Army engineer, who spent 2 decades untangling problems everyone else called impossible. While she played neighborhood monarch, I built a quiet dossier. And here's the twist. My 47 acres were never in her HOA to begin with. My grandfather's deed predates their cul-de-sacs by 3 decades, and his limestone corner posts still stand where he set them in '52. This isn't a postage stamp lawn. It's rolling hill country in unincorporated county with a hand-built barn that has weathered more storms than any stucco palace down the road. After my divorce, I came here to lower the RPMs of life, started a modest land clearing outfit, pond cuts, driveways, cedar poles, work that smells like diesel, dust, and honest pay. Then Denise showed up in my world like a clipboard in human form. The first citation called my grandfather's 1962 tractor unsightly agricultural equipment, escalating $50 a day until corrected. I called to explain, polite, measured, neighborly. She cut me off. This neighborhood has standards. Click. The second notice arrived with a threat of law enforcement involvement because my horses graze where horses have always grazed. Soon it was the barn, then my business sign, then her spotless SUV cruising slow past my fence at dawn and dusk. Phone lifted like a periscope. I found her one morning measuring my fence line in designer boots. And that's when I traded irritation for preparation. I drove to the county clerk, pulled plats and deeds back to Eisenhower, and traced boundary lines that told a story clearer than any speech. Her HOA ends a quarter-mile short of my cottonwoods. Authority is what a board votes on. Power is what the law actually says. So when those patrol cars spread out in front of my porch that early light, I had a manila folder on the table, coffee steaming beside it, cameras rolling, and a calm I learned in places far noisier than a Texas dawn. Denise thought she was closing a trap. She didn't realize she just stepped into mine. By Monday morning, Denise's paper storm had turned personal. The third citation labeled my barn, hand-built by my grandfather in 1954, an unsightly structure. The fourth called my modest wooden sign for Hartman land excavation an improper advertisement. It was obvious she wasn't enforcing rules. She was hunting trophies. Her spotless Lexus rolled past my gate like clockwork, 7 a.m., 6 p.m., windows down, cell phone angled toward my property. When I caught her marking my fence posts with neon paint and hammering stakes into my pasture, I knew she'd crossed from nuisance to trespasser. What she didn't notice was the discreet security setup I'd installed years ago after my divorce. A row of motion cameras, good night vision, silent as ghosts. The footage showed everything. Denise in yoga pants and aviators, hammering stakes before sunrise, measuring tape in hand, planting her little flags of conquest across my soil. I pulled every stake and stored them neatly in my workshop. Evidence. The spray paint stayed as proof of her arrogance. A day later came the sheriff's call. "Mr. Hartman," the deputy said, "we've got a report that you destroyed official survey markers belonging to the HOA." When Deputy Morales rolled up my drive 30 minutes later, I was already on the porch with my manila folder open and coffee poured. He listened politely as I explained, flipping through maps and deeds older than either of us. "Sir," he said finally, "according to these, your property's outside the HOA by a good half-mile." "That's right," I replied, sliding him the flash drive with the security footage. On screen, Denise's white SUV glowed under the infrared lights like a guilty ghost. Morales whistled softly. "These are the kind of markers you buy at a hardware store. Official surveys have serial numbers and county seals." He looked up from the screen. "Mr. Hartman, you're the victim here. Filing a false police report's a misdemeanor, punishable by jail time." As he left, he chuckled. By the way, my cousin needs a pond dug. You still take work like that? I smiled. Always. The irony wasn't lost on either of us. The HOA president trying to cripple my livelihood had just given me a new client. But Denise wasn't done. Within a week, city inspectors began calling. One said there had been anonymous complaints about zoning violations. Another wanted to check my septic system. Fire marshal needed to see my burn permits. Environmental services wanted runoff tests. It was an organized barrage, and I could practically see her fingerprints on every complaint. The kicker? Every system, every permit, every operation on my ranch was letter perfect. When Inspector David Lim finally came out, clipboard in hand, he spent 2 hours combing through the property. Mr. Hartman, he said as he finished, this place is cleaner than half the city facilities I've inspected. Whoever filed those complaints either doesn't understand code or has an axe to grind. He paused. Off the record, that HOA president has called our office 3 times this week. That's when I realized it wasn't about code or standards. It was about control, and she'd chosen the wrong engineer to test. So I shifted gears. No more reacting. From that moment forward, every conversation, every letter, every inspection went into a digital archive. I'd been trained to build bridges and levees under fire. This was just another kind of fortification. The difference was, this battle wouldn't be fought with concrete or steel, but with evidence. The next phase wasn't about fighting, it was about uncovering. Denise thought she could bury me under paperwork, but engineers know how to dig. I spent the following week deep in county databases, pulling public filings, financial statements, and HOA records. The deeper I went, the stranger the numbers looked. Landscaping costs were triple the average. Security consulting fees went to non-existent vendors, and payments were authorized with no matching invoices. It smelled like fraud hiding under bureaucracy. Then I met the person who changed everything. Her name was Linda Chow, the HOA treasurer. She was quiet, careful, and clearly nervous when she approached me after a community meeting I'd slipped into out of curiosity. You're the ranch owner she keeps targeting, she whispered. We need to talk. We met the next morning at a diner off the highway, coffee thick enough to stand a spoon in, booths patched with duct tape. She slid a small spiral notebook across the table. I've been treasurer for 3 years, she said, and the math doesn't add up. Payments to 3 companies, LC Management, LC Security Solutions, and LC Consulting, all supposedly for community services we never received. But every time I ask for invoices, Denise shuts me down. I turned a page and froze. All 3 companies were registered to the same address, Denise's home. She'd literally created shell businesses under her initials and billed the neighborhood through them. The total? Over $80,000 in 3 years. Linda stirred her coffee with trembling hands. She threatens to sue anyone who questions her. I've been copying records in secret. I thanked her, but she wasn't done. This isn't the first time, she said. Back in California, her old HOA had an LC Enterprises on the books too. They settled quietly before police got involved. By the time I left that diner, the puzzle pieces had formed a picture of serial embezzlement wrapped in suburban respectability. Embezzling more than $30,000 in Texas is a felony, punishable by years behind bars. Denise wasn't just bossy, she was a career thief in pearls. That night, I called my old Army buddy, now a civil rights attorney in Austin, Marcus Rios. After I laid out everything, he said quietly, Cole, this isn't just fraud. It's harassment with discrimination patterns. She's using her position to target minorities and veterans. That's federal civil rights territory. He explained that under Section 1983 of federal law, anyone using authority to systematically harass others can face massive civil penalties, personal liability, not just organizational. It wasn't just about my ranch anymore. It was about everyone she'd bullied. So I got systematic. My nephew Ethan, a cybersecurity grad with too much caffeine in his veins, set up encrypted backups, camera redundancies, and online monitoring. Every move Denise made, every post, message, or anonymous complaint was logged and timestamped. Then Linda called again, voice trembling with conviction. I've gathered more records. It's over $180,000 now. Forged signatures, unauthorized transfers. She's been stealing from us for years. By that point, what we had wasn't suspicion. It was evidence. Fraud, conspiracy, and civil rights violations. I'd faced flood zones and insurgents, but I'd never seen anyone dig their own hole this deep. The best part? She didn't even realize she'd already handed me the shovel. While we gathered proof, Denise kept unraveling. One night, a grinding metallic shriek ripped me out of bed, the kind that makes your stomach drop when you own heavy equipment. My excavator's fuel cap was pried open, sugar dumped in the tank, hydraulic lines sliced clean through. Repairs would run nearly $8 grand. I didn't even bother to get angry. Ethan's security system had caught every frame. Denise's white SUV gliding in at 2:47 a.m., her silhouette crouched with a tool bag, flashlight in her teeth, methodically sabotaging my livelihood. The footage was crystal clear. Deputy Morales came out again, and his jaw tightened as he watched the video. "Mr. Hartman," he said, "this isn't vandalism, it's felony criminal mischief. She's looking at serious time." He filed the report on the spot, and before leaving added, "Guess the HOA is about to get more excitement than their annual bake sale." 2 days later, my insurance agent called furious. "Cole, did you know a woman claiming to represent your HOA tried to get your policy canceled? Offered to mediate if we cut you loose?" That was insurance interference, a federal crime. Denise wasn't just reckless, she was desperate. Ethan kept tracing her digital footprints. Through a hidden Facebook group called Protect Sunset View, she was orchestrating a harassment campaign, encouraging neighbors to flood city offices with complaints and even offering to cover HOA dues for anyone who joined in. The messages read like blueprints for conspiracy. "If everyone reports the same violation, they'll have to act. I'll handle the paperwork." Her paranoia grew public. Neighbors whispered about her shouting matches at grocery stores and frantic posts about outside agitators. Linda told me she'd called an emergency board meeting titled Addressing Immediate Security Threats. I knew that meant me. "Record everything," I told her. "If she tries to make her vendetta official, she's implicating the board too." Linda did exactly that. The recording from that night could have been satire. Denise stood before the HOA with a PowerPoint labeled The Hartman Problem. She claimed my land endangered property values, proposed emergency powers to levy liens, and even declared HOA boundaries are fluid when community welfare is at stake. The board stared like she'd started speaking Martian. The next morning, zip-tied to my gate, hung a document stamped Notice of Immediate Lien Sunset View HOA. It demanded $15,000 in administrative penalties and threatened foreclosure within 30 days. My hands didn't shake when I called Marcus. "That's attempted extortion using fraudulent legal documents," he said. "We're talking organized criminal activity, RICO territory. She's just made it federal." But Denise's worst decision was still coming. That week, my daughter Lily, away at college, called me in tears. Someone pretending to be a sheriff's deputy had phoned her dorm saying I was under investigation for environmental crimes. Ethan traced the call straight back to Denise's home number. Impersonating law enforcement? Another felony. I thought I'd seen every kind of escalation until 3 trucks rumbled up my driveway one evening carrying men in HOA polos and carrying signs that read, "Respect property values, stop the harassment." Their leader said they were sent to discuss compliance. I stepped off the porch, calm as ever. "Gentlemen," I said, "you're trespassing." As they spread out across my yard, I nodded to Sarah, the single mother Denise had tormented, who was visiting with her son. "Call Deputy Morales," I told her quietly. The sirens arrived minutes later. The cameras caught everything. The intimidation, the banners, the moment realization spread across their faces that they'd just become evidence in a criminal conspiracy. Denise had officially crossed from meddling tyrant to ringleader of an organized crime case, and this time she couldn't talk her way out of it. The annual HOA meeting was the perfect stage for the finale. Word spread fast that something explosive was coming, and by the time I arrived, the community center overflowed. 200 residents crammed shoulder to shoulder. Linda had tipped off the local newspaper, and Deputy Morales stood near the door, arms folded, silent but unmistakably official. Denise swept in late, immaculate as always, clutching her briefcase like a shield. She still believed she was in charge. "Tonight," she began, voice echoing off the cinder block walls, "we address ongoing threats to our neighborhood's safety and reputation." I could almost admire her nerve. Then Linda rose from the treasurer's table, her small frame steady as stone. "Before we move to new business," she said, "the members deserve transparency about our finances." Denise's eyes went sharp. "This isn't on the agenda." "Yes, it is," Linda replied, and clicked a remote. Oh, the projector lit up with bank statements, payments to LC Enterprises, LC Security Solutions, and LC Management, all registered to Denise's home address. "Over 3 years," Linda said clearly, "these companies received nearly $180,000 in HOA funds for services never rendered." Gasp rippled through the crowd. Denise stammered, "These are malicious lies." "They're public records," Linda cut in. "Every transaction approved with forged signatures." I stood then, calm, deliberate. "Ma'am," I said, "Cole Hartman, the man you've been calling a threat." The room fell silent. "Your HOA's boundaries stop half a mile short of my fence, yet you filed complaints, false reports, even tried to claim my land with fabricated liens." I glanced toward Morales, who stepped forward just enough for everyone to notice the badge on his chest. "And we have video proof," I continued, "of sabotage, trespassing, false police reports, and fraud." The crowd began to murmur louder. Denise's mask cracked. "You people don't understand. He's destroying property values," she shouted. "No," I said evenly. "You did that yourself." Morales opened his folder. "Mrs. Pritchard," he said, "you're under arrest for embezzlement, falsifying documents, and multiple felony counts of criminal mischief." The gasp that followed sounded like a single exhale from the whole room. As Morales placed her in handcuffs, she glared at me, trembling. "You've ruined everything." I met her eyes. "No, ma'am. I just reminded everyone what justice looks like." The crowd erupted. Applause, shouts, a release months in the making. Phones recorded every moment as she was let out, her white SUV waiting to become evidence. 6 months later, Denise Pritchard was sentenced to 4 years in state prison and ordered to repay $540,000 in triple damages. Her husband resigned from his city job and quietly left town. The HOA rebuilt from the ashes under Linda's leadership. Full transparency, public audits, and a new rule requiring 3 board signatures for every expenditure. Property values rose and the neighborhood finally began to act like one. I used part of the settlement to build something lasting, the Sunset View Community Workshop, a 400-square-foot barn reborn as a place where veterans, kids, and neighbors learn real hands-on skills. Every Saturday, we fix what's broken: appliances, bikes, lawnmowers, sometimes even people's spirits. Sarah, the single mom who'd once been harassed, runs the safety program. We got married last spring. My daughter Lily transferred to a Texas university to be closer to home. Life feels solid again, like the limestone post my grandfather set 70 years ago. When I walk the pasture now, sunrise spilling gold over the hills, I think about the lesson this fight carved into me. When someone tries to bully you, don't rage, document. When they misuse power, know the law better than they do. Evidence wins every time. A few weeks back, a Marine from California called asking for help against his own HOA. I told him the same thing I'll tell you. Stay steady, stay smart, and never let fear dictate what's right. Good fences make good neighbors, but truth, patience, and community make something stronger. Peace that lasts.